There's a couple things that you need to be able to have. And one is you need to have a clear, dark sky. If there's a lot of city lights, you're not going to be able to see the northern lights. You just won't be able to see them at all. So it really has to be very dark, and it needs to be clear sky. So, Fairbanks offers quite a few places right outside Fairbanks that you can go. Some of them are only like 2 or 3 kilometers from downtown Fairbanks. They have some wildlife refuge areas where you can see the northern lights. Hi, this is Anita from the Dusty Roads podcast, where it's all about living life as a global citizen. Today, we're going to talk about the Northern Lights, and in particular, where can you see the Northern Lights in the United States? A lot of times when we think about the Northern Lights, we think of places like Norway, Russia, other parts of the world that have great Northern Light sightings, especially a place like Norway. But, actually, you can see the Northern Lights in the United States. And one of the best places to see the Northern Lights in the United States is Alaska. And this was from the Smithsonian Magazine. They wrote this, and they said this about the Northern Lights. While many travelers think they have to head to Europe to see the Northern Lights, you can actually spot this phenomenon without leaving the United States. Northern Alaska is where many Americans head for the chance to see the aurora. It may be cold in winter, but the inland Alaskan Arctic, where skies tend to be clearer, is one of the best places in the world to see this famous light show. So actually, one of the best places in the world to see this light show is Alaska, which is really quite fascinating. And, there's lots of places in Alaska you can see them. You can go just outside Fairbanks if you happen to be in the Fairbanks area. It's, one of the best places. And one of the reasons why is in order to see the Northern Lights, there's a couple things that you need to be able to have. And one is you need to have a clear, dark sky. If there's a lot of city lights, you're not going to be able to see the northern lights. You just won't be able to see them at all. So it really has to be very dark, and it needs to be clear sky. So, Fairbanks offers quite a few places right outside Fairbanks that you can go. Some of them are only like 2 or 3 kilometers from downtown Fairbanks. They have some wildlife refuge areas where you can see the northern lights. They have, Chena Lake area. They have all different other types of areas we can actually go and you can see the northern lights outside of Fairbanks. So if you happen to be in Fairbanks, you want to see the northern lights in the wintertime, you'd have a pretty good chance of seeing them if you go outside of the city. If you want to go even further and have even a greater chance, one of the best places is an area called Coldfoot Camp. Or near Coldfoot is a city called Wiseman, Alaska. And, Wiseman is about 15 miles north of Coldfoot Camp. And this area is about 60 miles north of the Arctic Circle and 270 miles from Fairbanks. It's a small village. It only has 12 full-time residents. But it's located at the Alaska Brooks Range. And this place, it actually has more dog sleds than it has people. But one of the advantages, it sits right where one of the best places is to see the Northern Lights, because for 250 nights out of a year, you can see the Northern Lights in this area. The Northern Lights usually you need to view them from like 10 p.m. to about 2 a.m. in the morning. Usually it happens about that time. And like I said, it needs to be clear, it needs to be dark, and it will happen from September to about April. So it's usually in the winter time. It's not during the summertime. So if you're looking for the best place to view the Northern Lights, you can really view it in Alaska. There's many places in Alaska, even outside of Anchorage. We have a blog post we've written on this, and we can we will put a link below into the description for you to look at the blog post to be able to see some of the different areas that you can view the Northern Lights in Alaska. So Alaska, definitely, it should be at the top of your place if you're looking to view them in the United States. Now, there are a few other areas where there's been some Northern Light sightings in other parts of the United States. Of course, your chance will not be as high as in some of the other locations as Alaska, where, especially in Wiseman, where you have 250 days out of the year where you can see the northern lights, but there are other parts where people have also seen the northern lights. And some of those other locations, include the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. You can sometimes see some of the northern lights up there in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. You can also check out northeastern Minnesota and also northern Wisconsin. All of those areas have shown to also have the northern lights. But again, in any of these places that you want to hope to see the northern lights, you need to really be in an area which is not heavily populated and an area which is clear and the sky is dark. North Dakota is one of those places because, again, North Dakota would have some clear, dark skies, as even there's been some sightings in Nebraska. And other places would include Washington State, and even as far south as Oregon, there's been some sightings of the northern lights. Idaho, too, especially northern Idaho, where there are some clear, dark, rural areas up there. I've been up to northern Idaho, and some of the areas, there's really not much population up there. You would be able to see the northern lights. And of course, without saying, you should be able to see them in Montana also, which also has some very rural areas in Montana. And if you're going to go further up or be in Canada, you should be able to see some of the northern lights also in Canada. So, here's the interesting part of this is that if you really want to see the northern lights, you don't need to leave the United States, that there are places that you can see it. But your best chance of seeing it always is September to April of each year. So all of these places, which we have mentioned, are all colder places. They've got, they would have snow. It would be cold out there. It could be some very cold nights. But at the same time, you would have a better chance of seeing them in these locations than in other parts of the United States. So the Northern Lights is a wonderful phenomena to see. It's beautiful. It's this beautiful light show that takes place at the nighttime. And it's really one of these natural wonders that if you're someone who loves the solar system and stars and loves the sky, then this is really something that you should go see. And if you really want to have the best chance of seeing it, head up to Alaska in the cold of the winter and go to the small town of Wiseman, because you would have a great chance to see the northern lights there at that part of the world. We hope that you'll have a chance to go out and explore these wonder of the northern lights, and that you will put a link into some of our blog posts that we've written about the northern lights. You can see some wonderful pictures of the lights themselves, and you can see, how beautiful these natural lights are. This natural phenomena that's up in the sky. It's just really one of these wonders that it makes you wonder what a wonderful world we live in, that we can still see these great wonders. This is Anita from the Dusty Roads Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We do appreciate you. We appreciate you being part of our community. We'd like to thank those who helped put it together, especially Rico. We'd like to thank him for making this all possible. And we'd like to thank you, our listeners. We know without you, this would not be possible.